Everyone. It's really lovely to see such a big crowd here tonight, and how fantastic to have the fire going. I didn't realise you had a fireplace. That's pretty special. It's really a thrill to be here tonight and to bring Bronwyn up from Wellington, where she's based at Massey's College of Creative Arts. We published this book earlier this year as a project to commemorate 130 years of the School of Design in Wellington. Now the College of Creative Arts, but a storied history, and many great artists have been graduates of that school, now the college, Mervyn Taylor being one of them. Bronwyn will explain to you just why it is that Mervyn Taylor deserved a book, and I think you'll discover pretty quickly that he is a national treasure that some of us may know about, but to many people he's relatively unknown. But by the end of this evening you'll realise what a heroic figure he was in art. Bronwyn's also going to tell you a little bit about the amazing detective hunt that went into creating this book. It was a search for his murals, many of which had been lost, or no one quite knew where they were anymore, or they'd been moved somewhere else. It was an enormous amount of sleuthing and digging, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy tonight hearing from her how she pieced this mystery together. Just wanted to say how much we loved working with Bronwyn. She will explain to you how she, I don't know if it's how you first came across Mervyn Taylor, but Bronwyn was doing some research work for her PhD on the compact cable, and she went to such lengths that she even got her scuba diving certificate so she could come up and dive out in the Rangitoto Channel to see where that cable came up. So this has been a real feat for her. The title is Wanted, The Search for the Modernist Murals of E. Mervyn Taylor. And would you now please welcome Bronwyn, who's going to give us the most interesting illustrated talk. Actually, before she does, just one last thing. I'd like to thank Paradox very much for selling the book tonight. If you'd like to buy a copy, and if you'd like Bronwyn to sign it for you, please do that before you leave this evening. She'd be very happy to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Nicola. So I'm going to come over here because I need to push buttons to advance slides. Juggle these cables. All right. Hopefully it's not too much crackle on this microphone cable, but tēnā koutou katoa. Kia ora. Ko puki atua te maunga, ko te awa kairangi te awa. He pāki au. I tupu ake au I pita one I te rohi o te āti awa. Ko Bronwyn toku ingoa, ko Matthew toku hoatāne, ko Stella rātou, ko Abel, ko Lane, aku tamariki. He kaimahi toi au I te kuninga ki Puruhuroa. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. So yeah, thanks again, Nicola. Thanks everybody for inviting me to talk here today, and for coming along to hear me talk. I'm here to tell you a bit about a project that I've been working on for the past 3 years, which has resulted in the publication of this book, Wanted, The Search for the Modernist Murals of E. Mervyn Taylor. It's really quite special to be speaking here in Devonport, because it's a part of New Zealand that's so deeply intertwined with the mid-century nation-building project. Of course, it was the Takapuna authors such as Frank Sargison and co who really made an imprint on this place. But the nationalist philosophy driving their work was deeply intertwined with that of E. Mervyn Taylor and his associates down in Wellington. This is E. Mervyn Taylor. He was a Wellington-based artist and designer who lived from 1906 to 1964. He was actually born in Auckland and attended Auckland Grammar School, but relocated to Wellington in his 20s. Through his work, he made a significant contribution to the emergence of a distinctive New Zealand language of art and design. His works are much loved and celebrated by many New Zealanders, particularly his wood engravings, etchings and illustrations created during his time as the first art editor and illustrator of the New Zealand School Journal. His work was of such quality that it was recognised overseas. He was elected an honorary member of the Society of Illustrators in New York and a fellow of the International Institute of Art and Letters in Germany. In 2014, I started studying towards a PhD in fine arts. My background's actually in art rather than art history. Researching the Southern Cross cable, which is an internet cable that's carried 98% of New Zealand's international internet traffic for 17 years. One of the sites that this cable comes ashore is Takapuna Beach, and it was my investigation of the site that led me to discover one of Merv's murals, as I'll come back to later. This also led me to discover that Merv had made a number of other mural projects towards the end of his career in both public and publicly accessible spaces. But there was a varied information on them. Some of them were known to be intact, some of them had been covered by walls, some were in need of restoration work, and we simply didn't know what state others were in. Claire Robinson, the Pro Vice-Chancellor of the Massey College of Creative Arts, saw the value in researching this further and was suitably intrigued to employ me as the director of the E. Mervyn Taylor Mural Search and Recovery Project. And if you think that the book title is a mouthful, try saying that one. From June 2015 to July 2017, we undertook work on this project. I actually titled it, so I'm a little bit proud of that title and being able to say it in one go. Taylor was an alumnus of the Massey College of Creative Arts, as Nicola mentioned. He had studied at it in one of its earlier phases, and this initiative was supported as a special project to commemorate the 130th anniversary of the college. Like Taylor, I also believe that high quality art should be accessible to people from all facets of society, and not just within the walls of galleries and museums, but for the people who seek it out there, but also within public space where it can interrupt our daily routines, where it can give us pause to consider the environments that we live in, and where it can remind us where we've come from, and it can encourage us to see the world differently. But making public art is a tough job, and artists working in this area can expect to encounter briefs that need to satisfy very disparate goals, slim budgets and persistent feedback from those with an untrained eye. And that's to say nothing of the, unideal encounters an artist's work might face once it's installed in public space. We set out to fill the gaps in the knowledge of Taylor's murals, researching, cataloguing and documenting the status of each of them. And we found that although he encountered some issues while working on his murals, he persisted and completed 12 extraordinary works that are distinctive and unique. But sadly, the value and quality of public artworks doesn't necessarily ensure they'll be cared for in the long term. Over the past 60 years, his murals have faced removal, vandalism, and destruction. They've been hidden, lost, and painted over. And one of them, thought by many to be his, turned out to be the work of another artist, James Turkington, who would also love to investigate further. One of Turkington's murals we were just looking at over the road in the ASB branch is remarkably still on the wall there, having been painted in 1965. Not sure if it's got any kind of official protection at a council level, certainly not at a national level. Some of the murals have also been cared for by the communities that surround them and repaired when damaged. And to those communities, I'm eternally grateful. Today I'm going to show you the murals themselves, also acknowledging the authors who have written about them for the book. All of these murals are intrinsically intertwined with the communities that surrounded their site, and many of them were created for the people And so it was quite clear to me from the beginning of this project that the people surrounding these murals should be given the first chance to respond to them. All of the authors in this book were considered very carefully and invited specifically. Each has a first-hand relationship with both the site of the mural and the subject matter that is depicted. They bring unique, informed perspectives to the essays in order to explore aspects of the murals, focusing on mural content and any relevant context surrounding the commissioning of the works and their lives afterwards. Taylor also tried to ensure that Te Ao Māori was fairly depicted in his works, researching his subject matter thoroughly with tangata whenua. Echoing this virtue where possible, I've invited authors of local iwi descent to respond to murals that depict aspects of Māori culture. And once I've gone through all these works, I'll focus in on a couple of them in particular to give you a sense of some of the stories that we came across. So here's Merv again with his children, Jane and Terence, giving them a piggyback ride. Surrounding him are pictures of some of his engravings, which, as I've already mentioned, he has primarily been known for until now. We actually have a gentleman here with an original print of one of Mervyn's works that I think he's happy to show people at the end. Over here, Gary. So thank you for bringing that. So he's been primarily known for these incredibly detailed, small, fine engravings, but not his murals until now. And so this book is really changing that. Mervyn came to murals late in his career. He was about 48 or 49 when he completed his first work, and it was this one, a sandblasted glass window for the Otaki War Memorial Hall, which opened in 1956. It was smashed by vandals in 2006, but the Otaki community got together and had it remade. The replica is still in its original position, and the broken panels are in Otaki Museum. In her essay for the book, Waiting for Revelations, Dr. Huhana Smith considers what happens when a public artwork is attacked, finding connections to another major local loss, the act of arson that destroyed Otaki's historic Rangiatia Church, which is also depicted in Taylor's window here. Through these two tragic local events, she finds a renewed sense of cohesion amongst the diverse cultures of a small town, members of which came together to rebuild both of these treasures. Taylor's second mural, created in 1958, was an incised tortura panel for the Meat Board Director's Room in Massey House in Wellington. Sadly, we haven't been able to track down the whereabouts of this work. In her essay From Paddock to Port, Linda Tyler discusses this private commission for one of New Zealand's biggest primary industry groups, noting the Japanism in Taylor's artistic response to the idea of selling New Zealand meat to the world. The following year, Taylor created a sandblasted window for the Kandala Presbyterian Church, also in Wellington. A beer bottle was thrown through one of its panes in 2011, but again the congregation had it repaired. Otherwise it remains intact in its original location. Tony Mackle writes about this in his essay, The Ascension of Christ, finding that it was a highly successful work, integrating well with the modern architecture of the church and meeting the physical, aesthetic and conceptual and financial requirements of the artist-client, architect and builders. Next came a sandblasted window in 1960 for the New Plymouth War Memorial Hall Museum and Library, which is now known as Puki Ariki. This one's still in its original place, although the planter beds have been replaced with the rather odd artificial rock facade. In his essay, An Eternal Flame to Provincialism, Brian James explores the difficulties that can arise when artists are required to work with committees that have strong opinions about art and the compromises that can occur which repress creative originality. Whoa. It's just water. Sorry. Chuck some paper on it. It's parenting skills, right? It was great to have Brian's contribution to the book, actually. It's his own book, E. Mervyn Taylor, Artist Craftsman, published in 2006 with Steele Roberts, really paved the way for this project. In 1961, Taylor and his son Terence, who also went on to be an artist in his own right, painted this mural on a wall partition in the Wairoa Centennial Library. In her essay Layers Upon Layers, Joyce Campbell positions Taylor's mural within the surrounding landscape and historic context of Wairoa. Hidden themes of tensions between settlers and local Māori were depicted in a manner palatable to a Pākehā audience, but perhaps also rendered ineffective. These narratives were further complicated by the mural's mysterious disappearance between 2001 and 2002, and this is one of the murals we'll focus in on later. Taylor's first ceramic tile mural was the one that kicked off the Mervyn Taylor Mural Search and Recovery project, when a cable station manager and I discovered it in boxes to Ika Amawi, which was created for the Commonwealth Pacific Cable Terminal in 1962. This is the other mural that we'll come back to. In my essay for the book, Voices Through the Deep, I find that the advent of this early New Zealand communications cable was celebrated with public vigour. This contrasts markedly with the communications cables of today, where efforts are made to ensure the cables are kept as inconspicuous as possible. And that's something I respond to in my own art project, which is on display at City Art Gallery in Wellington until the end of July as part of the exhibition This is New Zealand. I've got a copy of the catalogue with me, it just came out actually, so if you wanted to have a look at the pictures from that show afterwards, feel free to hit me up about that. So my contribution to the exhibition is called the Southern Cross Cable Atua, and this mural itself is actually installed as part of it, so if you manage to get to Wellington you can see it in real life. The same year as the compact mural, Taylor painted this small mural for the Soil Bureau in Taita, Lower Hutt, and sadly this one's been painted over. In his essay, Kia Kitia Te Waiwai Tangata, Nick Roskrug takes a unique approach, recounting the whakapapa of the mural as it sits in relation to Māori legends surrounding the kumara, demonstrating that Taylor must have possessed a thorough understanding of this subject matter in order to have depicted it so accurately. 1962 was a big year for Merv. His third mural was this ceramic tile mural for the Masterton Post Office. In her essay, The Taiaha and the Axe, Terry Tito finds present-day relevance between the images in this now hidden mural, I'll get back to that in a second, and recent Crown land settlements. Over the course of its history, the mural became enclosed within a retail shop space, and the building was sold off by the government to private investors, who allowed the tenant to build a wall in front of the mural. The shop space was vacated and the building listed on the property market while we were working on this project. Although we tried, we unfortunately weren't permitted to remove the wall and photograph the mural for the book. However, I'm excited to announce that as of very recently, the property is sold, and about 3 weeks ago, the new owner removed the wall and intends to save the work. So Merv was back in Masterton the following year to complete this ceramic tile mural for the Masterton War Memorial Stadium Hall of Memories, which you might recognise from the cover of the book. This one was remade in 1966 after having been originally installed as a mosaic mural. The mosaic tiles turned up with a huge variation in colour and they didn't meet Taylor's satisfaction, so it was remade as a tile mural instead of mosaics. Gareth Winter recounts the drama in his essay for the book, it's titled Lest We Forget, where he considers the importance of artistic integrity and allowing an artist to retain the final sign-off of their completed work. In 1963, Taylor also painted a mural for the National Mutual Life Assurance building in Wellington. The records of what happened to this are hazy, but the wall it was on has since been demolished. In her essay, Assurance, Sarah Jane Pardon delves into a history of the insurance industry, examining Taylor's planning sketches for this lost mural in an attempt to reverse engineer the conversations that shaped its final form. Drawing on research and personal experience, she finds a mural that spins a narrow-minded, conservative image of mid-century New Zealand life, and in its demise, speaks to an ever-changing urban and social landscape. 1963 was another mural trifecta year for Taylor. He produced this carved kauri panel for Broadcasting House in Wellington. In their essay on the politics of space and time, Ken Davis and Rose Evans, who are here tonight, I'd like to acknowledge them, recount the mid-century modernist architectural glory of Broadcasting House and the tragedy that befell it when it was burned to the ground as a result of suspected arson. The panel survived thanks to the foresight of Sharon Crosby and now sits in the boardroom of Radio New Zealand, as seen here. And finally, Taylor's last mural was a ceramic tile number for the Cable Price Downer House in Wellington in 1964, and this one is missing. In his essay, A Renaissance Interrupted, Gregory J. Smith, who is also here, I'd like to acknowledge Gregory, Greg laments the dual loss of Taylor's life in the Cable Price Downer House mural. Completed in 1964, the ceramic tile mural marked a new phase in Taylor's artistic development and was also the first he produced locally with the help of his friend, potter Roy Cowan. Sadly, he may never have seen it in its final location. Taylor passed away suddenly 1 month before the building opened. So that's what we've found, but so much of this project has been about the research journey. Each mural has its own tale, but it all started with Te Ika Maui. And here's how. So I'm a bit of a geek. For the past 4 years, alongside working on the mural project, I've been studying towards a PhD in fine arts at Massey University. My topic, as I mentioned, has been focused on the Southern Cross Cable network that's carried about 98% of New Zealand's international internet traffic for 17 years. The Southern Cross Cable is about the thickness of a garden hose and travels under the sand at Takapuna Beach, along the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, all the way to Hawaii, California, inland to Oregon, back through Hawaii, then Fiji, 2 stops in Sydney, and comes in at Murals Beach on the other side of the island. This era of the Southern Cross Cable being the only connection to the outside world via internet has come to a close just last year with a second fibre optic link, the Tasman Global Access, coming online early last year, and a further 2 cables on their way. Recent statistics emerged showing that 94% of New Zealanders check the internet daily, and a third are constantly connected. Over the 17 years since the Southern Cross Cable came online in 2000, the internet has become embedded in our daily lives and in our culture. But in an age of proprietary nanotechnology, we've lost the ability to engage with it on a practical level, so we've forgotten how it works. Terms like the cloud, wireless, and cyberspace don't help either, as they give the impression it's floating above our heads, whereas in actual fact it's buried under our feet. If our communications infrastructure has become magic in the public imagination, I wanted to demystify it. I set out to identify cultural narratives connected to the sites of the Southern Cross Cable and apply them to a series of artworks that address this issue. So I set out researching, visiting, and documenting the landing sites of the cable and learning more about how it fits into New Zealand's historic communications landscape. I found that although the internet presents itself as an intangible thing, when we think of it in terms of the land it passes through and the stories of those very specific sites it's associated with, we start to find connections with that romantic idea of a New Zealand national identity. After all, the cable was named after a constellation that features on a certain flag. In chasing stories of the Southern Cross, I learned of a mural that was located within the Northcote landing station. I made some inquiries about getting in to photograph it. As you can see, there's a bit of security around that site nowadays, but I was told that the mural wasn't there anymore. I went along to Archives New Zealand in Wellington and found this photograph of the mural. It was Te Ike a Maui by Mervyn Taylor, made in 1962 for the Commonwealth Pacific Cable Terminal and commissioned with public money through the New Zealand Post Office, which was a government department at the time. In the mural, Taylor extended his strategy of including depictions of aspects of Māori culture in his work, illustrating the traditional Māori creation story of the demigod Maui fishing up the North Island, titling the work after the legend. By focusing on this story, Taylor put a distinctive New Zealand spin on the significance of the new telecommunications cable. Taylor had been heavily influenced by the British arts and crafts movement, and even socialist realism and cubism are discernible in Te Ike a Maui. New Zealand had hosted an exhibition of Soviet art in 1957, inspiring the USSR to extend a reciprocal invitation to a chosen New Zealand artist, and Taylor was chosen. He visited Moscow as a guest of the Soviet Ministry of Culture in 1958, and also passed through the US and UK. He no doubt witnessed some fine examples of socialist realist public art during this time. The mural design was recreated in ceramic tiles by Carter Tiles in England and installed in the foyer of the compact terminal in time for the opening of the Tasman section of the cable. On the 9th of July 1962, the mural was revealed to the public at a ceremony attended by the Prime Minister, Keith Holyoake. The mural was very well received and attracted, in the view of the compact publicity unit, a wide field of interest, doing a valuable pre-publicity job for the cable. A press release on the mural stated it as being a work of striking beauty which graced the entrance hall of the terminal building. The same release continued to quote an architect who stated, "There is always a tendency to adopt austerities and eliminate anything not functionally required, but we can't live without art of some kind. It is essential to a civilised living, and I am glad to see such a fine piece of work in the new cable building." On the topic of the artist's choice of subject matter, when asked if he had any special reason for selecting this particular myth for the cable, Mr. Taylor explained that the myth of fishing up a piece of land was a poetical Polynesian way of describing the discovery of a new island. There was an analogy, he thought, between the fishing up of New Zealand by Maui and its modern counterpart, where the new cable again draws New Zealand out of the Pacific into the telephone systems of the world. During the 1950s, New Zealand was marked by poor communications infrastructure, which heightened a sense of geographic isolation amongst its residents. Since 1931, New Zealand had been relying on a radio telephone service which was becoming increasingly unreliable, susceptible to interference, and overloaded due to demand. Compact was a new coaxial submarine telephone cable slated to address this problem. It was celebrated as a triumph for the small nation that craved more reliable links to the rest of the globe. It would enable thousands of people throughout the world to talk to each other with complete clarity. Also promising that at the same time, thousands of telegraph and telex messages, as well as pictures and programs, will be exchanged. It's funny to think of thousands being an impressive statistic in today's world, where over 1.5 million New Zealanders are constantly connected to the internet. Compact was a feat of finance and engineering that stretched across the Tasman Sea and Pacific Ocean, linking New Zealand with its Commonwealth counterparts, Australia, Fiji and Canada via Hawaii, then via the Cantat cable with the United Kingdom, reinforcing the geopolitical ties that were strengthened during World War II. The Southern Cross cable follows much of this same path today. Commemorative stamps were issued, booklets produced, public celebrations held, and 2 films produced about the cable, 80 Channels Under the Sea in 1960 and Call the World in 1962. A small set of commemorative Wedgwood plates were created, and one particularly enthusiastic member of the cable development team wrote a 21-stanza poem titled Compact Capers in honour of the project. When the full cable system was switched on, an official opening was held in the Wellington Town Hall, networked via the cable with Australia, Britain and Canada. Her Majesty the Queen telephoned in for the occasion, announced by fanfare and the national anthem, as played by the Royal Canadian Mounties Band, followed by a special telephone conference between the Prime Ministers of the Commonwealth nations. However, all submarine cables have a limited lifespan, and Compact was no exception. On the 30th of November 1984, Compact was decommissioned, just prior to the State-Owned Enterprises Act in 1986, which split the New Zealand Post Office into 3 new enterprises: New Zealand Post, Telecom New Zealand, and the Post Office Bank, with the station falling under the remit of Telecom. In 1990, Telecom was sold to 2 United States-based telecommunications companies, Bell Atlantic and Ameritech, and became a publicly traded company. Around this time, the once publicly owned and publicly accessible cable station was transformed into the inconspicuous, private, high-security site that it is today. And the mural, also once publicly accessible, became locked away in a private complex. Curious to know what happened to the mural tiles, I went back to the station manager and asked him. He had a look in the now disused Compact station, and there they were, gathering dust in 3 cardboard boxes. Around this time, I had been invited by the Public Art Commissioning Group, Letting Space in Wellington, to propose a project for the office space of the J. Walsh Thompson marketing firm here in Auckland. The brief specified that the work needed to straddle both corporate and public spheres. One element was required for a vitrine that functioned as a wall between the firm's boardroom and the open plan office space. And the work also had to be able to engage public audiences. A time limit of several months was set for the commission. This led to Te Ika Ākauranga, a project to restore, digitise and revive Te Ika a Maui. The name Te Ika Ākauranga, or the Fish of Learning, was chosen in reference to the mural's original title and the physical location of the Southern Cross Cable and Compact landing stations at 1 Ākauranga Drive in Northcote. And Ākauranga in Māori can variously be translated as teaching, learning, discipline, profession, school, class, lesson. And I thought it was a really interesting comment on one of the more positive aspects of what the present day internet represents. With the permission of Spark, so in this time Telecom changed its name to Spark as well, there's a bit of an adjustment, musical chairs going on in the story. With the permission of Spark, I relocated the mural from Auckland to Wellington, where Robert Clendon, a conservator at Te Papa, inspected the tiles and advised on the appropriate ways and means of cleaning them. Then, with the help of a trusty band of volunteers, including members of the Taylor family and my own family and friends, we cleaned and catalogued each of the 398 tiles, which took a total of about 140 hours. Each tile was photographed and the photographs printed in order to create 2 quarter-size photographic versions of the mural, one for the JWT offices and a parallel work in my own studio. Both reconstructions utilised a fishing dragnet to mount the photographic tiles, which was a subtle reference to the surveillance narratives that were circulating at the time. This was in 2014. I posted the photographic tiles to JWT over the course of several months, where specially trained employees installed them in their indicated positions. So it unfolded as a sort of jigsaw puzzle for the staff working at the firm. The final instalment of pieces took place in October in 2014. As the work had been originally commissioned with public money, this was Te Ika a Maui, the mural was also returned to public access via the internet, where a digital version of the mural was made available for reuse under a Creative Commons licence, and is still accessible on my website, bronwyn.nz. Through the process, we found that 16 tiles were missing from the original mural. These were left as gaps in the JWT version, in line with common restoration practices, and in the digital version, missing tiles were indicated by an X-shaped image of the dragnet not intersection, echoing the X placeholder graphics that can sometimes be found online when images are missing, although that design strategy is starting to disappear from web pages now. Later, by closely studying the design and archival image of the mural, I recreated the 16 missing tiles, painting them in one-to-one scale, using carefully colour-matched gouache, which was one of Taylor's preferred mediums. These designs were used as the primary reference for the replica tiles created by a ceramicist for the installation that's currently at City Gallery. So it's a complete image. And so we've managed to save an important historic New Zealand public artwork. That's all it took. So now for a slight change of tack, we come to our second story, the case of the missing Wairoa Centennial Library mural. So Wairoa is a small town halfway between Napier and Gisborne in the Hawke's Bay. In 1961, they celebrated the opening of their new library, built to commemorate the district's centenary. Taylor had been contacted by the project architects Porter and Martin of Wellington to complete the mural commission at short notice. He provided a design, which was approved, and then travelled up with his son Terence during the May school holidays of that year to paint it by hand. Brian James has an anecdote about the creation of this mural in his book, and I quote, "When he was working, Taylor had little concept of time and would often continue through the night if things were going well. He and his son were painting one Sunday afternoon when the local police constable, evidently a stickler for the rules, saw them and ordered them to cease work. No manufacturing could take place on Sundays, the law said, and in his opinion, painting a mural was manufacturing. At the suggestion of the constable, Taylor pasted paper in the library windows lest the citizens of Wairoa witness them working on the Sabbath. Then he and Terence got on with it." End quote. On the 13th of July 1961, the Minister of Internal Affairs, Mr. Gotts, stood in front of a large audience to formally open the new amenity, which was celebrated as a source of local pride. The Daily Telegraph doubted, quote, "whether any town of comparative size in New Zealand would have such an attractive and well-appointed library." The Gisborne Herald reported that Taylor's panel for the library provided a link with the past by depicting events in the district's history, with figures symbolising the wheat, whaling and flax industries, and the meeting of Māori and settler cultures. A cabbage tree in the lower left of the picture was said to be the cabbage tree under which Sir James Carroll was born. The Daily Telegraph recorded the library's interior colour scheme, which consisted of mainly grey walls, with most of the remainder of the room finished in pastel shades, with lino of a light green and stone colour, with inset copper-coloured squares. All in all, it looked to be a fine example of clean modernist architecture. Unfortunately, however, that staircase, so cleverly concealed behind the mural's wall, didn't meet 21st century building code standards. And when the library became in need of renovation 40 years later, around 2001, the staircase and the wall in front of it had to be removed. The mural panels were carefully taken down and put in storage in the old Wairoa fire station. Shortly thereafter, the library staff recall a woman claiming to be a family member visiting the library and becoming distressed at the mural's disappearance. If it was not going to be cared for and displayed, she demanded the work should be returned to the family. It appears this woman was permitted to take the artwork. In 2015, I contacted the library inquiring about the artwork, only to find it was no longer there. After discussing the story with the Taylor family, I found that the family had certainly not been the ones to visit the library and didn't know anything about the work's disappearance. If they didn't have the work, then who did? Neither the library nor council could find any records of where the panels had gone. We spoke to a librarian who had been the mayor's PA at the time and who remembers being contacted about the mural by this irate woman. She put the woman in contact with the mayor and didn't have anything else to do with it. That mayor has since passed away. Could this person have been an imposter, out to get their work for their own selfish reasons? Or were they a Robin Hood, distrustful of the authorities and using dishonesty to take the work to ensure it was properly looked after? Was there a black sheep in the Taylor family who might have done this? Was this a conspiracy amongst the librarians of Wairoa? Had the work been destroyed by accident and someone was embarrassedly covering for it? Was this a crime, an accident, or was there something else we weren't seeing? Had it been taken by Carmen Sandiego, and where in the world was she? Our minds boggled with the possibilities. In mid-2016, my colleague Sue Elliott and I were discussing the project with an arts patron and a collector of E. Mervyn Taylor's work, Richard Burrell. Richard generously offered a reward of $5,000 for information leading to the rediscovery of this work. Neither of us had run a wanted campaign before, so we got our thinking caps on. What had to happen in order for the work to be considered rediscovered? What criteria would people have to meet in order to get the $5,000 reward? What if we got multiple calls? How would we pay the informant? Mindful of the potential of an honest thief, someone seeing the error of their ways, or a friend or family member wanting to make things right without getting the culprit in trouble, we made provisions for anonymous tips, even figuring out how we would pay an anonymous informant without endangering their privacy. For us, the most important thing was finding the mural and documenting it. I looked up the police information for making anonymous tips and adapted the text to our scenario. I printed out a set of questions to ask anyone who phoned with information and carried them around with me for months. Anna Brown, the designer of the book, whipped us up a wanted poster, which we printed and sent out to councillors in the area, as well as people throughout New Zealand, art world, gallerists, auction houses, academics, curators, anybody, in the hopes that someone might have come across something, perhaps when viewing a private collection or valuing a work. Here's our poster on the notice board in Wairoa's East End Cafe. We sent out a media release, which was picked up by the local newspaper, the Wairoa Star. We set up information on our website. We sent an email out to our database and promoted it on social media. And we carried on doing the footwork, phoning up people in the area who might have some connection with the work's disappearance and even visiting Wairoa in person. And we waited for days, weeks, months. At the end of last year, when we were days away from the book going to print, I received a phone call. I'm phoning about the mural you're looking for. We've got it. Can't remember the exact words, but it was something along those lines. The Wairoa Centennial Library mural had turned up. The person who found it had been looking for information about E. Mervyn Taylor online and discovered our campaign and immediately came forward, declining the reward money. They wished to remain anonymous, and as part of the conditions around the campaign, we are honouring this request. But I can confirm that the work is safe and we were able to photograph it in time for getting the book off to print. We're hoping to have it... Oh, there's an old note from the... I don't know what's going to happen from here. We're actually here trying to work with the people who have it to see if it could be relocated in some way, but it's quite complicated. So yeah, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'll be keeping a close eye out. The painting covers 9 large panels, each just over a metre square, and while faded and with a bit of minor rectifiable damage, it's in good shape. But wait, there's more. This book is dedicated to the New Zealand artists whose public artworks have been neglected. One of the goals of the E. Mervyn Taylor Mural Search and Recovery project was to ensure the ongoing preservation of the surviving murals. This turned out to be a complicated aspiration since it's not straightforward to gain heritage listing for public artworks at a national level. Some territorial authorities maintain heritage lists that include public artworks, but not all of them by any means. Surely the Wairoa Centennial Library mural wouldn't have disappeared like it did without a trace if the council had maintained a public art heritage list. Despite the project's focus on E. Mervyn Taylor, we were approached by numerous members of the public with information about other works in need of similar attention. We started a list, which we called the New Zealand Mural Heritage Register, to capture this information, and Greg actually helped a lot. He's done a lot of work in that area. It's actually a basic spreadsheet at the moment, so don't get too excited, but it's grown to include over 160 entries. To this end, I'd like to plug a project we've been working on with the Ministry for Culture and Heritage. We're hoping to establish a more formal New Zealand Public Art Heritage Register, researching all the multiple other murals and public artworks made by New Zealand artists like Lois White, James Turkington, Russell Clark, Guy Nairn, Jim Allen, etc., 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 prior to the 1990s, and establishing more consistent national processes for properly documenting and giving significant work some kind of protection. The reason we've picked the 1990s is that councils tend to have fairly good processes in place for protecting works from that point onwards. We're hoping to get it off the ground later this year, but if it sounds like something you'd be interested in being involved in somehow or learning more about, please let me know. So on that note, if you've got any questions, I'd be happy to answer them or attempt to answer them. There are books available at the back and I'd be quite happy to sign them, as Nicola mentioned. And I've actually brought a few copies of the, I made a tour guide to the Southern Cross Cable as part of my exhibition for the City Gallery that includes details for the site where the Mervyn Taylor work originally was, and if you're interested in a copy, come and see me. I've got a few. So thank you very much. Question?
How important were I guess, the clients and the clients' advisors, like architects, engineers, in the commissioning of the artworks for Mervyn Taylor?
How important were the clients?
Well, I guess, was there a close relationship between Taylor and various architects?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of these works came about through Mervyn's connection with the Architectural Centre in Wellington that he helped found in that era. So it was loosely modelled on the Bauhaus and included people like Morris Patience and Ernst Plischke. So he became friends with a lot of architects and government architects as well. So he was actually known for advocating for this Percent for Art scheme in New Zealand, where a portion of the budget of every new building was put aside to commission a site-specific art for that building. And there's a quote in the book about him being known to be passionately arguing this case. He got a bit of a reputation for arguing this case at the Architectural Centre. So yeah, I think that was a lot of what led to these commissions.
Clever marketing.
Don't know if he saw it that way.
No.
Yeah.
At one stage, there was a beautiful Pat Hanley mural at the Auckland International Airport, and that's disappeared. I don't know if anybody knows where that's gone.
I think that's in the Chartwell collection have it.
Who?
Chartwell collection have that and the Hotary.
Oh,
and it's split up amongst galleries,
oh, really?
I believe.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
What about the working sketches and
The working
cartoons,
sketches.
work up to produce them? Is there any record of
His
that?
design, yeah, absolutely. And the book is actually there's a lot of visual material in there, a lot of the planning drawings, the gouache sketches and designs. So yeah, part of this project has been trying to track those down as well. Te Papa have quite a few of them, and we found quite a few in Taylor's studio in Hatton Street in Karori, which is still intact. Yeah, so that was, kind of eventually found them, but yes. they're great because their colour, all of the a lot of the Duncan Winder photographs, well, all of them are black and white, so the designs actually give us a sense of what colour the missing murals or destroyed murals were.
Can you tell us more about his last mural and what do you see in it that's new?
Yeah, sure. Could go back to it maybe. So that was the Cable Price Downer House mural in Wellington, and it's a departure really. You can see that. I mean, a lot of these other ones have quite a heavy illustrative style. Whereas Cable Price Downer House, he's kind of starting to introduce these colour fields, this kind of grid system, and I guess moving to more of a heavy semiotic approach. Yeah. Rather than constructing a scene that's coherent, he's kind of got these components that are quite distinctive. Yeah, they're not necessarily in the same scale.
It's kind of 20 years before its time, isn't it, in a way?
1964.
You think of
Possibly.
artists like Colleen and Ian Scott.
Oh yeah, New Zealand context, yeah.
Doing similar things.
Yeah. And it's hard to know where this influence came from as well for him, because it's a departure. Anybody else? Yes.
I had the good fortune to know Mervyn Taylor very slightly.
Yeah.
I was a bit younger than him, but we lived very close together in Karori,
Oh, did you?
in a street that ran into the Hatton Street, when the area where he lived was still known as Hatton Street Extension, because that was the part that led up to Mount Johnson. And he was a shorter than average man. And I remember him walking down from the tram at the bus in Hatton Street. We stopped at the end of Hatton Street and walking along Hatton Street. And he was also a customer of mine when I worked for Roy Parsons in his bookshop. Days before Roy Parsons moved his business into I forget the name of the house.
Yeah, well, he was in the bottom of Massey House.
Massey House.
Yeah,
that's right.
with the
And so-
meatboard mural.
So
Yeah.
if you take Roy Parsons and Mervyn Taylor, Dan Splishka, J.C. Beaglehole, etc., you start to get a picture of the left-wing Wellington's bush.
Absolutely. And Beaglehole wrote quite a bit about, he wrote a large obituary about Mervyn when he died in 1964. So I definitely had a connection there. Yeah, and he was short. He had suffered both polio and scarlet fever as a child, and had a bit of a limp. He had to have, was it daily or weekly massages in later life to kind of relieve pain. But yeah, he was known quite small. Actually, the family still have a beret that he used to wear, and they've brought it on a number of occasions. And yeah, it's tiny.
How are we going to save murals? Because it's a miracle that Jerkington one has survived here. But sooner or later, some idiot in the bank will probably want to paint it out.
Yeah, so I think the first thing is raising awareness. Well, I mean, the first thing is really finding out what's out there, raising awareness about the value of these works. And then we've been looking at other models. I mean, even thinking about how Heritage New Zealand works and Docomomo work. Perhaps there are different criteria for works that are of a national significance or works that are of a regional significance, and then working with all of the territorial authorities to have consistent preservation criteria. I mean, the Masterton Post Office building's a really interesting case because that was actually listed on their heritage list, the council heritage list. So if any building applications came through for that building, they would intervene and protect this mural. But yeah, with a painted work, it's another question, isn't it? Because you don't need a building consent to paint a wall. Yeah. So it's really, I mean, raising the awareness with the people who own it of what the value is, and then beyond that, getting some sort of protective surface in front of it. Or, yeah, it all comes down to money as well, of course, doesn't it? In this day and age. Yes.
It's not only New Zealand which has problems with preserving murals. Leonardo da Vinci painted The Last Supper as a very large mural on a wall in a convent. The monks later cut a doorway through the lower part of Da Vinci's mural.
Yeah.
There's a couple of great murals in some of the libraries in Auckland as well, at Leeds and at Grey Lynn.
Right.
Rory Grimsdale's done murals on the walls of the area, so if you're passing by any of those libraries.
Yeah, no, I hope to come back and look at all of them.
Yeah, have a look.
Yeah.
These in the 80s, and there's some other older ones as well, yeah, at Leeds. So.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Any more questions? Coming? Okay. Well, thanks everybody for coming, and as I said, I'm happy to sign your books, or if you want a copy of the tour guide, all of that. Thanks.